You don't know the story about Benjamin O. Davis Jr.? Bullshit! Sit down, get comfortable, because I'm about to tell you the story of the first African American Air Force Brigadier General, Benjamin O. Davis Jr. Benjamin Jr. was born December 18, 1912, in Washington, D.C. He was the second of three children born to Benjamin O. Davis Sr. And if you haven't seen the video I covered on his father, please go back and watch that video when you get done with this one. In the summer of 1926, at just the age of 13, Davis Jr. flew with a barnstorming pilot at the Bowling Field in Washington, D.C. This experience would lead to his determination to one day becoming a pilot himself. At the beginning of the Great Depression in 1929, Davis Jr. would graduate from Central High School in Cleveland, Ohio. That same year, he would begin attending Western Reserve University from 1929 to 1930. In July of 1932, after attending the University of Chicago, Davis Jr. would enter the United States Military Academy, West Point. During his 4 years at the academy, Davis Jr. was isolated by his white classmates on account of his race. He never had a roommate, he ate by himself, and his classmates rarely spoke to him outside of the line of duty. Intending that their silent treatment would drive Davis Jr. away from the academy, but it ended up having the opposite effect. It only fueled his determination to endure the animosity, compete, and graduate. Ultimately, his perseverance earned him the respect of his classmates, as evidenced by a biographical note of Davis Jr. in the 1936 yearbook. And it read as far as the courage, tenacity, and intelligence with which he conquered a problem incomparably more difficult than plebe year won for him the sincere admiration of his classmates, and his single-minded determination to continue his chosen career cannot fail to inspire respect wherever fortune may lead him. Davis Jr. would graduate June 1936, 35th of a class of 276, becoming the first African American to graduate from West Point since 1889, making him the fourth African American to ever graduate from West Point. This is Davis Jr., this is his father, Brigadier General Davis Sr. What's crazy is, once he commissioned to second lieutenant, the Army only had two African American officers that were not chaplains, Davis Jr. and Davis Sr. This was because during Davis Jr.'s junior year, he applied to the Army Air Corps but was denied because they were not accepting African Americans. So once Davis graduated in 1936, the Army would assign him to the 24th Infantry Regiment, one of the original Buffalo Soldier regiments, coming out of Fort Benning, Georgia, which I covered a video on them already. I highly recommend you go back and watch that as well. Even still, Davis Jr. would not be allowed into the base officers club because of his race. In June of 1937, Davis would attend the U.S. Army School of Infantry in Fort Benning, Georgia. He would later be assigned to teach military tactics at Tuskegee Institute, a historical black college in Tuskegee, Alabama. Crazy enough, this was the same assignment given to his father, Davis Sr., years before, because this was the Army's way of not having African Americans in charge of white soldiers. In early 1941, the Roosevelt administration, in response to the public pressure for greater black participation in the military as war approached, ordered the War Department to create a black flying unit. Captain Davis Jr. would be assigned to the first training class at Tuskegee Airfield, giving them the name Tuskegee Airmen, which I will also do a whole video on the Tuskegee Airmen a little bit later. Davis Jr. would also become the first African American to solo an Army Air Corps aircraft. In July of that year, after being promoted to the rank of lieutenant colonel, was named as commander of the first all-black air unit, the 99th Pursuit Squadron. On June 2nd, they would see their first combat in bomb diving missions against the German-held island of Pantelleria as part of Operation Corkscrew. In September of 1943, Davis would be deployed to the United States to take command of the 332nd Fighter Group, a larger all-black unit preparing to go overseas. But soon after his arrival, there was an attempt to stop the use of black pilots in combat. This infuriated Davis Jr. so much that he held a press conference at the Pentagon to defend his men and present his case to the War Department committee who were studying the use of black servicemen. General Marshall would enter an inquiry but would allow the 99th to continue fighting in the meantime, pretty much stating the 99th's performance was comparable to any other air unit, which would be proven in January of 1944 when their pilots shot down 12 German planes in just 2 days while protecting a Zeno beachhead. Davis himself would lead 67 missions in P-47s and P-51 Mustangs. Davis was also one of 10 officers who presided over the Freeman Field Mutiny court-martial. Moving on to July of 1948, President Truman would sign Executive Order 9981 ordering the integration of the armed forces. Colonel Davis Jr. would help the Air Force in drafting a plan on implementing this order. Then in 1949, Davis would attend Air War College. He again saw combat in 1953 when he assumed command of the 51st Fighter and Scepter Wing, and he flew an F-86 Sabre in Korea. Davis Jr. served as Director of Operations and Training at Far East Air Force's headquarters, Tokyo, from 1954 to 1955, when he assumed the position of Vice Commander of the 13th Air Force, with additional duty as Commander of Air Task Force 13 out of Taiwan. But during his time in Tokyo, he would be temporarily promoted to the rank of Brigadier General, making him the first African American to become a Brigadier General in the United States Air Force. In April of 1957, Brigadier General Davis Jr. would arrive in Ramstein Air Base, West Germany, as Chief of Staff of 12th Air Force, U.S. Air Forces in Europe. Then in December of 1957, 12th Air Force was transferred to James Connolly Air Force Base in Texas. Davis Jr. would assume his new duties as Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, Headquarters U.S. Air Forces in Europe, Wiesbaden Air Base, West Germany. While in West Germany, Davis Jr. would be temporarily promoted to the rank of Major General in 1959, while his rank of Brigadier General was made permanent 1960. So that would make the official date that Davis Jr. became the first African American to receive the rank of Brigadier General in the Air Force. In July of 1961, Davis Jr. returned to the United States in the U.S. Air Force headquarters. Davis Jr.'s promotion to Major General would then be made permanent in February of 1965. He would remain in his position at Headquarters U.S. Air Force until his assignment as Chief of Staff of United Nations Command and U.S. Forces in Korea in April of 1965, in which he was also promoted at this time to Lieutenant General. He then assumed command of the 13th Air Force at Clark Air Base in the Republic of the Philippines in August of 1967. Davis Jr. would be assigned as Deputy Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Strike Command, with headquarters at MacDill Air Force Base, Florida, in August of 1968, with additional duty as Commander-in-Chief, Middle East, Southern Asia, and Africa. He would retire from active military service on February 1st, 1970. On December 9th, 1998, Davis Jr. would be promoted to the rank of General, with President Bill Clinton pinning on his 4-star insignia. His awards would include 2 Air Force Distinguished Service Medals, Army Distinguished Service Medal, Silver Star, 3 Legion of Merit, Distinguished Flying Cross, 5 Air Medals, 3 Army Commendation Medals, and Langley Gold Medal. Now you know the story of the first African-American Brigadier General in the United States Air Force, now General Benjamin O. Davis Jr. Make sure you hit that follow button and stay tuned for more stories like these, as long as we track it.